it worked the way a lot of the companies claim, then we would all be taking them and everybody would be on it.
Yeah.
But again, if you need testosterone, use testosterone.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk.
Jump into from like a hormonal viewpoint was, what's your thought on HCG monotherapy, and then also the use of HCG with TRT in Gen Pop? What do you see good success with either? Do you think that it's something that more people should consider, so on and so forth?
So HCG is often given to guys with testosterone replacement to maintain fertility, also for testicular hypertrophy. So I always go off and make jokes about the fact that like we women don't care how big your balls are. Like it makes everything else look bigger, and women are not putting on their dating profiles like I'm a ball girl. I love like a big sack, you know. However, there are guys that care and they want to maintain that. So that would be a reason in addition to maintaining fertility. There are clinics out there that just give it because they think that it goes along with it. Some guys do really well on it, some don't. And
well, let me interject. Does it? Like if you're using that while you're on, will it maintain fertility? And will it if the dose is high, like most of the lifters will do?
It's supposed to.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's supposed to doesn't necessarily mean.
So men should do a sperm test before they go on testosterone if that is something of concern.
Yeah.
Because it's odd because it's not something that's often talked about when whatever doctor they initially talk to about TRT, they're not necessarily saying, well, is fertility something that you care about? Do you want more kids? Stuff like that, which is mind blowing. But that is also, especially in younger guys, just get a sperm sample so you know, because then if you go on testosterone and then you have no sperm, you can't necessarily blame it on testosterone, but you didn't know beforehand. So always get a test. So yeah, so that is the primary reason it's given. As a monotherapy, what I was going to add to HCG being a female pregnancy hormone, not all guys will feel great on it because they don't have a deficiency in that.
Yeah.
And so that's something that can antagonize estrogen, and also they may do better without it. If they need to go on something that's not testosterone, it's different with different clinics, but I think more clinics will err on the side of using clomiphene, but for a short period of time, because that's not something that guys would want to be on for a long period. So if they're younger, but I have guys that are onto HCG and they feel fine and they've had no issues.
But in gen, for the average Gen Pop person, it's going to be a fertility aid, probably.
I wouldn't use it as your replacement for TRT, which is a good thing to touch on, because guys will try to find every other way aside from using testosterone to increase their testosterone. And I'm like, listen, if you're a diabetic, I'm not going to give you protein to hope that this complicated process to make sugar, if you need testosterone, go on testosterone. But for some reason, with all the stigmas and everything, like everything else is looked at as this might be the way.
Well, sometimes it's even worse for that.
Right. Yeah.
And then also the same with pregnenolone. Do you find that you have a pretty successful rate with improvements in people with pregnenolone in terms of it enhancing the treatment?
So it's tricky with guys. Unless it's deficient, it's not something that I would haphazardly throw at somebody. You want to get that tested because it can cause anxiety and a host of side effects if a guy is just taking pregnenolone just to take it.
All right, so let's stay on this, because that's twice now that this has come up, like the sperm count, pregnenolone. What should they have tested before they go on? Because there's different types of clinics. There's Merrick Health, which we all know is what everybody should use, right?
Yes.
So they're a good one. But there's other ones, I call them Test Club for Men.
Yep.
You know, that you just get a hold of and they just send you whatever you want, veterinarian or not, right? So in those cases, they're probably not even doing labs at all. It's like take a physical, protect their ass.
Write your name on a piece of paper.
Whereas what would the markers be they should test before?
So if they've never been on testosterone, you want to get FSH and LH just to see what's going on there. Is the signal being sent from your brain to your balls? Because that will determine what type of hypogonadism they're suffering from if they have it. So primary is more having to do with testicular trauma. And if they have a varicocele or if they've been kicked in the balls or something, then that's something that's very difficult to rectify without hormone optimization, or if it's due to old age. So
that would be like a manufacturing issue, for want of a better way of putting it. Like they can't create the testosterone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If their factory installment is not operating properly. Secondary hypogonadism is what the majority of men are dealing with, especially the younger ones. And that's the impact of stress and the fact that there's a disruption from the signal from the pituitary down to the testicles for some reason. And it's finding out what is that reason. And that can be a host of different things. Majority of the time, it's because of stress, the input of environmental stressors, physical, mental, emotional. But I don't think people really think of that as a reason.
Yeah.
They don't realize how stressed out. I mean, I think one of the most terrifying things to do to somebody is sit them like on a front porch with no phone, no TV, no radio, and just sit there with themselves. Like what we used to do back in the day. That is terrifying for people to have no stimulus. But can you imagine how much less stressed they would be?
Yeah, that was literally going to be my next question, because you kind of say younger generation, it's becoming more and more common. So I was going to say, what has changed then, culturally, socially, economically, whatever, in that time frame where now incidences of low testosterone in younger generations is increasing? What do you think, if you had to pick a couple of like main drivers there, what do you think they are?
Number one, obesity.
Okay.
The sedentary lifestyle and the fact that having high body fat is the most inflammatory tissue. So now your body's suppressing a hormone that is going to make you feel better because it is threatened. So that's a stressful environment in and of itself. So having that high inflammation, and that's why it can be a problem where men want to add testosterone that is not wanted into a body that is stressed and inflamed, not going to be as good a time as if they're leaner and have a better body composition. But I think part of that is also the video games and not getting outside and all of that, in addition to a lot of the environmental toxins, which used to be like super woo-woo and like, people using glass containers and stainless steel are such dorks. And actually now that's more necessary. It can be overwhelming because it's not something that you can really tangibly feel or understand. Like, yes, we have all these plastics and all these xenoestrogens and stuff coming at us, but no one really feels that like happening in real time. So it's easy to dismiss. So what I tell men is, listen, here's some structure for you guys to consider as like the big rocks. If you're using plastic containers to store food and reheat and all of that, switch that to glass. Switch your water bottle from plastic water bottles to stainless steel glass if you're brave. And then the second thing would be any products that you're putting on your body every day. So not everybody is using lotion or makeup or whatever, but shower gels, shampoo, all that stuff, aftershave. If any of that has the toxic chemicals that create those fake estrogens, that's something you want to look at changing out. And fortunately, it's a lot easier nowadays where there's a lot more products. Before it was very hard. Even at the hotel, it says no phthalates, no parabens, no chemicals. And I was like, oh, wow. So they're starting to realize that this is a problem. And so I would say lower body fat if you're over 15%, switch out your Tupperware for glass, water, stainless steel. And then the third thing, the products that you're using every day. There's obviously way more that somebody can handle, but I think it's overwhelming to a point where you can go down many rabbit holes, take your Wi-Fi out, but it's like, at what point do you don't have to move
on your porch and put your balls in the sun every morning when the sun rises?
No, I tried that.
Okay, damn. But I just think that hearing that stuff from you is interesting, right? Because like you said, on an N=1 scale, we're never going to feel the effect of whatever plastic bottle or whatever, right? But on someone who runs a business where you have an input from a whole demographic that are dealing with the potential outcomes of these supposedly minor things, you have the data to see the differences and what's actually having an effect, right? Because it'd be easy for someone like me to go, well, that's not going to change anything. But like, if you're literally dealing with hundreds of people every year or thousands, whatever, and you're making these changes and all those changes are in part bringing these outcomes, then at what point can you just say correlation has to equal causation at some point? Just because I haven't got this peer-reviewed meta-analysis, which will probably exist in 10 years' time, because the
Exactly.
science is always a decade behind, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because we don't have that now doesn't mean I don't have the data where I can say, well, I think that's a freaking good idea. And even if it's not, what downside has it got?
Right.
Well, that's where I was going to go. Let's set that aside and just say that's all false, right? But if you're showering every morning, but you're using a different product and you think that it's going to help your health, that's reinforcing that pattern in the morning that you're doing things to help your health, to help recover.
Yeah.
Right. If you're taking the food out of a plastic container and then just putting it in a freaking bowl to microwave it, that again is reinforcing that I'm doing things to become better fit. Right. So say it's all bullshit. That's not. Because if you're eating 3 times a day and you shower in the morning, there's 4 times every single day that your brain is being reinforced. I'm doing things to become better. I'm doing things, and that's going to carry over to all the other things, right? To where you get in these conversations with people that, you know, are in that rabbit hole of eliminate all this shit out of your life. And then the other one's like, oh, that's all bullshit and all this other kind of stuff. But nobody's saying you're reinforcing positive patterns.
It's a good
From that.
perspective.
So they both can be right. Now, I don't fucking know, but I know that's right. You know, nobody's going to convince me that that's not going to make a difference. Because it's so easy to be able to do that. And it reinforces that pattern.
It's like buying new gym clothes.
If that reinforces the pattern to somebody to actually make it to the gym that otherwise wouldn't, then tell me it's bad.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's the same with talking to a guy in the military, and he was just saying, like, obviously, like, the first thing you do is you make your bed, and he's like, they don't give a fuck whether your bed is made, but they do give a fuck that you start off your day with following the rules and regulations that come with being part of the military, right? And like, I suppose it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, start your day as you mean to go on. So if that's using a soap,
different soap, come on, that's so easy, man.
Eating your breakfast out of a different container, getting 5 or 10 minutes of sunlight in the morning with your phone still in the drawer, whatever. Does it really matter if it just gets the cog turning?
Yes.
In the right way? Like,
I think people argue about dumb shit way too often.
Well, they do. And I like to look right in the middle there and say, okay, but, and then ask either one of them that. Then what are they going to say?
You can't argue that.
No, it's good that you start off knowing that you're putting shit on your body that could potentially destroy you and make you die 10 years later. That's a good way to start your day, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's,
I'd say one of the questions that came up I quite liked was if you could just put one message out kind of now that the general population and demographic had to just learn about TRT and HRT, like kind of one sentence, one fact, what would that be? What would be the biggest takeaway statement for you that people just need to get their head around when it comes to HRT and TRT?
TRT is simply replacing what your body should already be biologically producing. Nothing more, nothing less. I think it's attached to a lot of the stigmas and the scariness and all that stuff because of research that's been outdated and refuted, but also a misunderstanding of associating it with bodybuilding only, which obviously are way higher doses than what guys on therapeutic use are doing it for. So same with the, I don't want to get too big. Cool. Try.
So do you think there's still, even now, there's a big kind of misconception there with that in terms of what TRT actually is? In terms of like, you know, we're looking at it as a, you know, it's a replacement of what you should have but whereas the average person still looks at it as some kind of super physiological advantage, like a cheating mechanism.
Yeah. Because the discussion online too, a lot of like the questions that I get is understanding what it can do for you. And this goes back to what we were discussing before, because they think that it might be the answer to all their prayers and it'll finally make them jacked. And even guys who go on like 2 months in, they're like, you know, well, I've been on TRT for 8 weeks and I'm not jacked yet. And obviously that has a lot other variables that pour into that. But sometimes they see it as that's the only thing it does. They don't know how powerful it can be for your mind and for your brain and how for your heart and all that stuff with the cardio protection, with the conversion to estrogen and just living a higher quality of life. And it's one of the safest medications a man can take, you know? you have commercials that are saying like you're going to have explosive diarrhea as side effects to certain pills and turn into cannibalism and all that stuff. Yet testosterone's bad.
Yeah.
Like that still exists.
Yeah. The fake, the artificial jack or the accidentally being jacked thing just made me think of when we were talking about cardio before. People think it's going to kill their gains, it's going to gain muscle, but you look at every professional athlete that's jacked, they're doing way more cardio, way more than anybody than 10 minutes on the bike. 4 times a week. And NFL players, rugby players, all these people, that's all they're predominantly just doing that.
And then lifting on the side.
And then lifting on the side. And if anybody's getting accidentally jacked,
it's them.
It's them, right? So we could say you should just only do more cardio.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just lift by accident and get jacked.
And not care about it.
But even that kind of goes back to like when we were talking about like, you know, you look at like the old time strongmen and guys 40s, 50s, and they're all working in farm fields and factories and stuff, just doing like exhausting physical jobs. And then obviously there's no PDs and stuff at that point. And some of those guys, that wasn't stopping them from doing anything what would still be considered incredibly impressive now.
Totally.
And I bet they could squat and deadlift heavy in the same week. Without trashing themselves, which, you know, we could, you know, you hear that kind of thing all the time, right? I can't squat and deadlift heavy in the same week. Well, okay, maybe world record level, multiply, whatever. But at some point, do you want to ask yourself the question, would it be beneficial if I could get myself to the point where I could? Would that be a good thing if I could do both?
I don't see why not.
Why? Because if I can do them, the lifts I compete in heavy more often, that might lead to more results, right? I mean, it's crazy thought.
That's what I do. Like Luke Lehman's talk at Silverback was about doing cardio, like for dudes. And so he put videos of me up with my deadlift and pull-up PR. And then he's like, and then Allie goes and runs an hour the next day. And so I'll put that on my stories. I'm like, I ran an hour yesterday, and then I'll be doing loaded pull-ups with like 60 pounds. And people are like, wait, like, so you don't lose strength and you're not shrinking? And oh my gosh, you can still do both? And I'm like, how cool is it that, you can actually lift that and then go run. I enjoy it. I played soccer. Like, it's okay. Because you're not going to shrivel up. Like they associate any type of cardio always. Well, I hate running. Why does it have to be running? There's 11 billion other, choices that we have.
But when the zombie apocalypse hits, you're going to be pretty well prepared there. All around. That's another great way of putting it. Like apocalypse ready. Maybe we should sell that training program. Just another one that came up there, because this is kind of maybe a little bit of personal experience here for me, but someone asked the question, do you find that you have to make any special considerations or have to work especially hard to combat the side effects of people who are on things like SSRIs when they're on TRT? Because obviously it normally comes with some kind of weight gain or lethargy and sometimes like that. So do you find in those scenarios that there's anything different that you have to do, or there's any methods that you use to combat those side effects with those individuals?
So we have the discussion, obviously, of what else they're on and understanding if they are experiencing those side effects, how we can best navigate that through their program. I am not somebody to say, well, you can get off of those medications. I'm not qualified, nor would I go near that. So I will lean on the medical practitioner to handle those conversations if they come up. Nothing so crazy, though, with any of our guys has happened. And we don't have a lot of them who are on that. But the times that we have, I would say, if anything, they're just maybe more tired. But nothing.
And do you ever find that you maybe take on people who've been on those kind of medications or maybe anti-anxiety meds or whatever, and then TRT actually gets them to a point where they don't need them? As in that kind of like is a catalyst, and everything starts improving, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, maybe I don't need these anymore.
That's actually very common in veterans, because when they leave the military, similar to the TRT Club for Men starter pack that everyone gets out the door, veterans get the starter pack for them. It's like Adderall, Ambien, antidepressants, stuff like that, when in fact they actually should have their hormones checked and they need testosterone. So quite often, nor do they want to be on those, because I think for them it's more of a pride thing, but they just feel so awful and they don't understand why. Onset of getting hormones tested, getting on testosterone, and then they realize that they can taper off, and they have. And so we've had that before. Yeah.
The reason I bring that up, just as like a personal tangent, sorry, but like I was on every SSRI you can ever imagine, and like I had at one point I had what was called a serotonin storm, which is basically what happens if you swallow the whole box and try to off yourself. But my depression was actually because I have way too much serotonin. Obviously, serotonin calms everything down, brings you low, right? So I was being given SSRIs that just made serotonin go up. So it just made everything worse, right? If I had anxiety, that'd be totally different. But I just think sometimes there's a bit of a miscommunication there. But my testosterone, because they were doing blood tests on me at the time because they thought I might have testicular cancer and various other things, has always come out like, I think the range in the UK with whatever measure they used was like 400 to 1100. Might have been like nanograms per deciliter or whatever. And I would always come out like 408, 404, 398, something like that. And bear in mind at the time I'm training, eating well, not sleeping, but that was a side effect of everything else. And it was only when I actually started taking testosterone, which I had to self-administer, that because it stimulates dopamine, which was the root of the problem, having dopamine receptors that were just frazzled, having something that actually stimulated the dopamine was like, oh, this works now. Do you know what I mean? Every other medication I was supposedly meant to take to feel fine did nothing and made me feel worse.
That's interesting.
And then take testosterone and stimulate the dopamine system, which was where the actual problem was like life-changing. I mean, that's the only reason I'm still here now, you know? But I just wanted to make that point because, like, I'm sure there are other people out there who maybe are in a similar scenario where they're getting thrown all these other pills that are maybe working on systems that aren't the broken system, and maybe something like TRT, I'm not saying they should all just go on TRT, but something like that is actually going to help fix the system that is broken. And it's not the traditional thought process of your GP or your doctor or whoever you go to, you know?
Yeah.
So it could be, though, because they're all going to tell you to get a second opinion. You know, so if the conversations that you're having with a physician just don't seem to line up, that's why you should see a different physician, especially if it's hormone related, because most don't specialize in that at all.
Yeah.
You know, so you just find somebody else. So,
yeah, I suppose the difference for me in the UK it was you can't really get that stuff privately, right? So I was just flat out told you're under 35, unless your testosterone's like 1, like they ain't touching you with a yard, because they're just going to say, well, your test is low because you got this going on. But it was never thought of the other way around, right? Maybe all of this is going on because this is, and so on and so forth. Or I just thought that was an interesting point in that, you know, there is probably a demographic of people out there who maybe have a similar issue, and that TRT or something like that,
thyroid usually,
could actually be the game changer for them. Like thyroid is another great example. Like, oh, well, you know, at least if we give you SSRIs, you won't feel bad about feeling tired all the time. You don't be as sad about it. Where it's like, well, can we just not be tired? Can we do something about that?
I know. Well, I do actually have clinicians, if anyone listening is in the UK, there are 2 clinics that came to Silverback, and they treat the way that I would want them to, similar to how Merrick looks at things. Because in the UK, it is difficult. Australia as well. Those are some of the toughest countries to get proper HRT. But if anyone listening needs somebody, I got a guy. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you've done that, because like the UK is pretty far behind.
Yeah.
In that regard, you know, we come over here and see what you guys, I know you all think your system's broken and you're still way behind, but we're another step back again, you know? So all of this is like kind of groundbreaking for us. Oh, shit, we can get access to this stuff if we
come to Florida, you can get anything.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Go to Mexico and just buy it over the pharmacy counter, worst case scenario.
That's where Florida sources it from.
Yeah, perfect. So another one that came up was, first off, the use of things like fenugreek and tribulus and all those type of test boosters. You can probably tell from my demeanor what I think of them, right? Anyway, the question was, do you think they do anything? Do they have any effect? And if so, should they or should they not be cycled in their usage?
So I've had guys actually drop me their labs in my DMs on Instagram. Like, I took X or whatever booster, and then it did this to my labs and my test went up. Similar to what we were talking about before, but they don't feel any different. Nothing else has changed in their life or whatever. But they are like, yes, okay, so yes, you can say it works theoretically if you can show on paper that it went up in your blood. If you want to say that was the reason, cool. I will say, just like with anything like fat burners and all that stuff, if it worked the way a lot of the companies claim, then we would all be taking them and everybody would be on it.
Yeah.
But again, if you need testosterone, use testosterone.
Very good point. Okay. I'm going to read out one or two of the more novel questions.
Naughty.
Yeah, you said that one.
Now the good
okay,
stuff.
So, what are the negative, if any, impacts of chronic uncontrollable